everyone, I'm Jay.
And I'm Sean.
And it snowed.
It did a lot.
So we're enjoying some of the falling snow. We had like 30 centimeters or something. It might be more than that.
I think it's more than that.
I think it's more. That's what the Weather Network said, but they're not doing the shoveling.
No, we've gotten so much.
So if you hear snowblowers,
that's why.
That's snowblowers.
Everyone's digging out.
You may hear snowmobiles. And you will certainly see dogs in cardigans. Those belong to us. There are 4 of them running around out here. I'm holding Bronx. Sean, you've got Fudgy. And guess what? We watched a movie. Good for us, eh?
Yeah.
We watched News of the World.
Yes,
this is one that I feel like I was waiting pretty hotly in anticipation for most of 2020. We didn't get it here until 2021 when it was finally released on VOD yesterday.
Because all our theaters are closed.
They sure are. Hi, Prunksy. Oh boy, thank you. So News of the World. I read the book some time ago, so that's why I knew I really wanted to see it. Aside from the fact that it is a Western starring Tom Hanks. Now, earlier this year, I think it was on Apple TV, correct me if I'm remembering wrong.
You are correct.
We watched Greyhound, which is another Tom Hanks movie that came out this year, a war movie. And I thought it was stunning, actually. I loved that movie. I loved his performance in it. I thought it was so layered and so complex and so interesting. Even though it takes place really within a matter of just a couple of days during some very heavy battle at war. And so he is not sleeping. He is fully engaged for all of that time.
Yes.
And it's kind of nutso. And I think it didn't get the respect it deserved, possibly because it just had an Apple TV release. But it was kind of a great movie.
I agree.
And I think this one is the same. So I hope it gets a little more attention paid to it. I suspect it might be in the running for some Oscars, possibly even for a 10-year-old girl. And this was her first English language movie. Which is funny to say because she speaks maybe about 3 English words the entire movie. So let me tell you what it's about. Captain Kidd, this is Tom Hanks. He is now the veteran of 3 wars.
Yeah.
That generation went through some stuff, guys.
They did.
So he's been through 3 wars. Most recently, the Civil War, I believe, was about 5 years ago.
That's right. It's 1870s Texas.
Oh, thank you. There you go. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
And since then, he's basically just been traveling all around Texas, bringing them the news of the world.
Literally.
Yes. He's got saddlebags full of newspapers. And for the cost of a dime, which I would like to know...
Seems like quite a bit. Really.
Yes. That would have been an expense.
Yeah.
And yet lots of people were paying it because...
Well, how else are you going to get this? How else are you going to go see Tom Hanks live?
We've seen Tom Hanks live.
We have. That's true.
Yes. But true enough, it
Worth
is...
10 cents.
Oh yeah, I'd pay a dime all day long for that. He just reads a selection of newspaper items from a selection of newspapers.
It's true. He's curating them. He's reading interesting stories.
Interesting stories at the local and federal and global level, such as it was back in...
Yeah.
It
would take a while for a newspaper to get across the Atlantic.
Yes. So the news is going to be dated. So you do have to curate it because there is no sense telling people stuff that really doesn't affect their lives in any way. And even federally that's true for a number of reasons. Not least of all because the Civil War is not far enough behind them yet in Texas.
It's not.
It's still
essentially going on.
Yeah. So, the open road, though, in Texas, I have to say, not a friendly place.
It's the worst.
Even for a war veteran, a grizzled man, who you really get the sense from, he's a peaceable man, but he is not afraid of violence. Obviously, he's seen and done quite a lot of it, and is willing to do it when necessary. But he's not that guy. He doesn't want that. He's not looking for it.
No, just leave him alone and you'll be fine.
Yes. But it finds him quite a lot on the road.
All the time.
Yes. Including one day when he happens upon an overturned wagon and a black man strung up in the trees.
Yeah.
and his ward, a 10-year-old girl, cowering nearby. Won't even be caught. It's very hard to catch her.
Yep.
She's terrified.
Well, why wouldn't she be?
Well, yes, clearly something terrible just happened to her in this wagon. But something terrible has been happening to her whole life. So she started out one day with a mom and a dad, and I think a little baby sister of some sort. And they were slaughtered. And so she was taken in by an Indian tribe. Perhaps the slaughterers.
Perhaps. It's not clear.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But she was taken in by an Indian tribe. Then her adoptive parents were slaughtered.
Yep.
So she's been orphaned twice, this little girl.
Well, 3 times almost, because then she gets taken up by the feds, and she's going to be relocated to her only living relatives, and her courier gets slaughtered.
That's right. I don't think she called him Dad yet, though.
No, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
You know.
They probably weren't that close. Although, maybe they bonded.
Especially because she does not speak English. She mostly speaks her native Indian language, which most people who are not of that tribe do not speak. And she's a little bit wild, a little bit feral almost.
Yep.
But she has grown up in a very different society, in an almost different manner of civilization than the one currently enjoyed by most Texans. Which is ironic, because we are bombarded by the fact that Texas itself is wild. So for them to be calling her the wild one is a little bit cheap, I think. Because she doesn't hurt anyone.
No.
And most Texans, I don't think you could say the same of.
True.
So, because her former career has been strung up, Tom Hanks now, for some reason, has the responsibility of returning her to her only living relatives, an aunt and uncle who I think she hardly ever knew.
I don't think she knows.
No.
Yeah.
Certainly she has no memory. She has really no memory of her life before the Indian tribe, it seems.
Yeah. Well, she's young.
She's still very young. She's like 10 years old.
Yeah.
Joanna is her name. Played by Helena Zengel, who is just amazing. I was really dumbstruck by her several times. But I had to think of it because she's so good and she's so natural, it doesn't stand out. Which is unheard of, really, from child actors.
Very rare.
You know, it's very hard to get such a performance from a child actor, and yet she's incredible.
Yes, she is.
Because she's a chameleon, and she's had to be, I think, to survive as long as she had. So she takes on many different personas depending on who she's with and how she's communicating and how much she trusts them, which is a big deal. So really it becomes a road trip movie, but it's 1870s Texas. So they're not traveling by car, they're traveling by horse and buggy a lot of the time, horse and wagon.
At best.
If they're lucky, yes, until somebody stops them. There are marauders, there are thieves, there are worse than that, human traffickers before we even called them such.
Yep.
You know, it just happened all the time.
All the time.
Yes.
It is the Wild West.
Oh, super wild. And the thing is, it's hard to even know what is the biggest threat to them. Is it the people or is it nature itself? Because this wilderness is actually very harsh. We see them get trapped in a sandstorm, I want to say.
Yep.
It's brutal out there. I mean, and if you lose your horse, you could die. You could easily die because these roads are not well traveled.
Nope.
You're not going to come across other people.
You're not, because everyone that they come across, when he tells them where they're going, they're like, don't do it. Those roads are as dangerous as they come.
Yes, and it's going to take weeks by horse. So imagine if you're on foot. It's basically a death sentence.
Yep.
So they have a lot of odds to overcome. And meanwhile, Joanna is unwilling. This is very much against her will. I don't know what her plan is. I guess she wants to go back to this tribe where she's from, but she is there totally against her will.
Yes, she is. She's looking to escape.
Oh, for sure. So he's, dragging this little girl kicking and screaming, sometimes quite literally.
Yeah.
She doesn't have language in common with him, and so there's basically grunts and screams are their only means of communication.
Yeah, he does know a bit of German, and she turns out to be from a German family.
Yes.
Although her German is not really in her control either.
No.
So you're right.
They have nothing.
Yeah.
And yet, they do start to bond. And I thought, how wonderful. It's a Western. There is violence. There's quite a few violent episodes because they do come across a lot of terrible people and things. And yet, this movie is also about, like, companionship. And, I mean, you can't even call them an odd couple because it's a man and a child. Like, they're not supposed to be together whatsoever. No. And yet... And he's a man who I think has embraced the loneliness of the road. We hear about, you know, his loneliness for his wife who's back home. We hear that a few times. But he has been really...
He travels on his own up till he finds Joanna.
Yes, he is super alone.
Just from town to town. Mm-hmm. And he'll go in and he'll do his show for one night and then he'll move on. Yeah. So... that's not a super happy life. No.
And so there is a strange warmth that we get from the two of them being together because I think both of them have been essentially alone for quite a long time. And so for them to develop this kind of sweet friendship, even though they're being bombarded on all sides by all kinds of threats and challenges, even though they don't have a language in common, I thought it was a really kind of sweet movie that way. And let me tell you, Tom Hanks is in full daddy mode. Ooh la la. I mean, he's grizzled, sure. He's a little rough around the edges. As this whole movie is. Yep. You know when it's set. It is very much a Western movie. It's bare-knuckled kind of thing. And Paul Greengrass, who is the director, who is Tom Hanks' director for Captain Phillips, he has, I think, a very stark style, at least in this movie, which is complementary, I think, to the Western genre. He composes very simple images, and yet it's a very pleasing effect. You know, the color palettes are gorgeous. It is very desert-like at times, so it's a caramel deserty, and they're dirty and they're gritty. Yep. I mean, if you've seen Sisters Brothers or True Grit, it's kind of that style of Western, where it's not really about the violence, it's about the relationships, but it's a Western, so there's gonna be violence. You can't help but, yes.
Yep.
Yes. In a time when they didn't have any bullets left.
Right, they used them all up in the war.
Yes, and, they had passed a lot of laws about who could have bullets.
Sure, they don't want those dirty Southerners to get them back.
Exactly, so they're not even well armed. Like, this is just the craziest thing to me.
Yeah.
Really crazy. But I thought it was terrific.
It's a wonderful movie.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You liked it too?
I really did.
Good.
I think this is, I'm not a huge Western fan, but a Western done well is a really cool genre movie, mm-hmm. and this is a Western done well. Mm-hmm. And it is really neat to see that bonding that happens on the trail mm-hmm. as they go. Yeah, they travel for weeks and weeks because mm-hmm. they don't go very fast in a horse and buggy.
No, they do not. And I mean, the roads are not really roads.
Oh, no, they're paths.
The wagon is misused. Like, it's just nothing. And so is the horse. Sorry, horse, I hate to call you out. But, like, nothing in this scenario is brand new and wonderful. No. Everything is downtrodden. It's fairly recently after the war, so...
Yeah. People are not.
Texas is still in recovery mode, right? It is a tough time. I mean, they're paying a dime just to have newspapers read to them.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. I felt so sad even when Joanna got in on the newspaper reading and she was making like sound effects and I was like, this is what they had, and we complain about not being able to go to the movies, and that's what they paid a dime, which is probably way more than a movie ticket price.
Probably.
Yeah,
you could probably buy a house
relatively.
for 30 cents.
Yes. Or steal one for free.
Well, yeah, that's why they're so cheap.
So I just thought, this is who these people are. They're survivors. That's all they've really got going in their lives. And now these two have finally found each other. Although you remember that they're always moving towards her family where she will be dropped off. So that's kind of a sad thing to keep in the back of your head, that this friendship is got an expiry date on it. So and you just want him to have this one shred of happiness, because it seems like his life is so stark and lonely otherwise, and obviously hers has been filled with trauma and tragedy as well. So you hardly want to get to the end and see her like be ripped from his arms, but that's where they're going.
That's the happy ending here.
Yes. But I like how there's also this slightly timely aspect to it, just in like bringing real news to the people, and this sort of emphasis on how truth matters and how story matters, because he is a storyteller, even though it's non-fiction.
Yeah.
You know, he knows how to get the crowd going, and the crowd is so receptive. You know how I loved this, but like they would cheer and stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, a newspaper story generally gives the whole story away in the title. That's what they do. That's what a headline is. But they're still acting so surprised by every twist and turn in the story. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did make me feel real sad for those people. That was the excitement in their lives.
Maybe quarantine isn't so bad.
Yes, it does make you appreciate what you have. So that's News of the World. It's apparently available in select theaters. We have no theaters open within kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of us. So I don't know where you would find an open theater right now.
No, but you can also get it on VOD. So there's your in, no matter where you are.
No matter what, yes. So will we see this young Helena Zengel on an Oscar ballot this year?
She's got a good shot.
Yeah, she does. I mean, here's the thing. It is a stacked category. We've got Frances McDermott for Nomadland. We've got Vanessa Kirby, of course, for Pieces of a Woman. But, like, it is a stacked category. So there's not going to be a lot of extra room. But I was super
very
impressed.
deserving. She and Tom Hanks carry this movie.
Yes, it is
and
almost
we all
a two-hander.
know Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
So that's no surprise. But this little girl is keeping up with him.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal.
Without dialogue.
Right.
Much of the time.
Big point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I thought the script was handled well. I did read the book myself, so it was interesting to see how it was adapted. And I would say pretty faithfully adapted if you like the book as well. It was a well turned out script, I thought. Obviously sparse when it comes to dialogue, because I don't think Captain Kidd is a big talker
He's not
either.
A big talker either.
Which is funny for being a storyteller, but like that's when he comes alive, right?
Outside of that, he's not saying much to anyone.
No. And since our neighbors are plowing their driveway, I guess we'll have to call it there. It is a recommend from us.
100%.
It's a premium rental right now. Check it out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.